Hey everyone, it is Danny and welcome to this update video on the tropics. And so I'm here with the latest on Tropical Storm Julia, which is expected to become a hurricane very soon, and it is likely to bring life-threatening conditions to portions of Central America as we're going to be headed into the early part of the new week. And so guys, before I go into details with this system, please do imagery of it. There we are seeing that Julia is quite massive right now in the South Caribbean and making its way towards the coast of Nicaragua. And so very dangerous conditions are expected from the cyclone as it is going to be closing in. And right now it is likely that areas are already being impacted by the cyclone by its outer bands. And some of those outer bands are likely potentially going to be reaching Jamaica, but of course nothing major is expected here from it, but increased rainfall across the island is possible as a result of Julia, but of course most of it is well to the south of the island and we're not expected to be directly impacted. Of course, it's headed to Nicaragua. And so right now there are various watches and warnings that are in place. And so going to the cone forecast here, we see that we have some areas highlighted in red, blue, pink, and yellow. And so those are the watches and warnings. And so there's a hurricane warning, and that is in red. That is in effect for San Andres, Providencia, and Santa Catalina Islands, Colombia, as well as Nicaragua from Bluefields to Puerto Cabezas. And then there is a hurricane watch that is in pink. That is in effect for Nicaragua, north of Puerto Cabezas to the Honduras-Nicaragua border. And there's also a tropical storm warning in blue in effect for Nicaragua, south of Bluefields to the Nicaragua-Costa Rica border, and Nicaragua, south of Puerto Cabezas to the Honduras-Nicaragua border. And then a tropical storm watch is in yellow. That is in effect for Honduras from the Nicaragua-Honduras border to Punta Patuca. So those areas are all likely to experience those tropical storm or hurricane conditions come tomorrow, starting as soon as today and going into tomorrow and as the system closes in. And so it is going to be bringing, as I said, those very dangerous conditions. And the main problem with any tropical cyclone is the water, be it from the storm surge or the heavy rainfall that results in that inland inundation. So a lot of rainfall is likely from the system here. And as a matter of fact, here are the rainfall totals. So for San Andres and Providencia, 6 to 12 inches of rainfall are expected. In Nicaragua, 5 to 10 inches, some isolated maxima of 15 inches. And then elsewhere in Central America, 4 to 8 inches, isolated 12 inches. The Isthmus of Tehuantepec in Mexico, 2 to 4 inches with isolated maxima of 6 inches. And so all of this heavy rainfall that is expected, as I said, is likely to cause flooding, especially in low-lying flood-prone areas, guys. And then in terms of that storm surge, it is likely that we're going to be having the inundation of the coastline as a result of the storm's winds pushing the water on shore, being at least 2 to 4 feet above normal levels. And this is for areas such as San Andres, Providencia, and Santa Catalina Islands, as well as along the coast of Nicaragua that is under a hurricane warning. So guys, please take all the necessary precautions and stay safe if you're there, because this is not a cyclone to be underestimated. And so let's go ahead and take a look at what models are expecting in terms of the track guidance and intensity guidance. So of course, here's the model intensity guidance, and models are expecting that this is going to become a hurricane. It's going to be rapidly intensifying into a hurricane before making landfall. But of course, that time is in fact limited because it only has the rest of today to really take advantage of the conducive environment it is in. But after that, it is going to be moving inland with all of those dangerous conditions up ahead for the various areas. And then in terms of the model track guidance here, some of these models are showing something quite different. We have a few that are expecting that it is going to be making its way into the Gulf of Mexico, and a few expecting that it is going to be crossing over into the Eastern Pacific. So the long term for this is quite uncertain, so we just really have to wait and see what's going to be happening. But for the most part, areas such as, of course, Nicaragua, Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, El Salvador, maybe even Guatemala and areas as far as Belize could experience impacts from the system. But of course, the worst of the storm will likely be in Nicaragua and the islands of the coast. And actually, tracking Julia right now is really reminiscent of Iota back in 2020, though that was a very disastrous hurricane. I mean, Iota was a high-end Category 4, initially thought to be Cat 5, but it made landfall as a high-end Category 4 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 155 miles per hour. And so, thankfully, that is not expected with Julia, so it is not likely that this storm is going to be intensifying into a major hurricane, but nevertheless, it is going to be bringing along with it those very dangerous aforementioned conditions, guys. So again, it cannot be emphasized enough to take all the necessary precautions and stay safe, because this cyclone is very, very dangerous and it will be bringing those life-threatening impacts. And so in terms of favorability right now in the vicinity of Julia, when we take a look at the sea surface temperature map, we're seeing here that sea surface temperatures are quite conducive, 29-30 degrees Celsius being seen. And of course, as I usually say, tropical cyclones need at least 26 or 26.5 degrees Celsius. So that is quite conducive for Julia. And then in terms of the wind shear, now when we think about the wind shear, those are the upper level winds, and the red indicates unfavorable wind shear, which is when we have those strong upper level winds that really help to inhibit tropical cyclone intensification and growth. And then we have the yellow, that means that things are quite neutral, but the ideal shear is favorable wind shear. Of course, that is when we don't really have those upper level winds being a problem for the cyclone. And so we're seeing that for Julia, it is in a region that has mainly, say, neutral going to favorable wind shear. So that is really going to be aiding in intensification, because of course the cyclone is just growing and intensifying with not much interruption from any unfavorable conditions. And I mean, it is quite evident that the storm is not really encountering a whole lot of unfavorable conditions. When we take a look at it on satellite, it is a very symmetrical cyclone that is just growing and getting itself together and intensifying even more. So of course, again, landfall is expected in the early morning hours of tomorrow, with this system likely to be a Category 1 hurricane. As of now, the National Hurricane Center is calling for maximum winds of 90 miles per hour at landfall. So there can be higher gusts though, but of course the wind is not the main issue with the cyclone. It is going to be the heavy rainfall that is anticipated. And so now is the time to get all preparations underway and hunker down for this storm, because it is going to be bringing those very deadly conditions to sections of Central America, and not just Nicaragua, but of course other areas such as Costa Rica, Honduras, maybe El Salvador, Guatemala will be impacted by this as it makes its way through the area. And so I'll be keeping you guys updated on this cyclone as time goes by. And so that is really it for now. And if you